Hey everyone, it is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. Welcome to my comic book countdown. What is really my video diary of what I've read this week. Well, particularly the new comics that came out this past Wednesday. And the great thing about this is it keeps me up with my reading. And in the meanwhile, I give you my highly subjective ranking and a few thoughts on the 15 some of them oversized comics that I picked up this past Wednesday. There were a lot of good ones. I feel like there was nothing that was like hitting it totally out of the ballpark, but you can't have that every week. But out of 15, I'd say I had a super great time reading all but 2 of them. So I had 13 comics that I really enjoyed. Hard to rank, but I'm going to do it anyway. So in at number 12, at number 15 is The Eternals, Kieran Gillen and Esad Ribic. I have not been enjoying this a whole lot all along. I've been sticking with it because, hey, Kieran Gillen must be up to something, and Esad Ribic is worth just the price of admission. But this was so dull. I'm kind of like weirdly attached to the Eternals as a Jack Kirby product, but I think maybe this time it was just such a plod through it. I've kept thinking, oh, I wish there was less pages in this comic book. It did have an interesting reveal at the end, showing us which character was the traitor, although I feel like that character had not been developed a whole lot beforehand, at least that I could remember, to make it have that much impact, but it did have enough impact that I was a little bit curious now to maybe read the next issue. Do I take this off my pull? How many more issues are there? I should try to figure that out. This is issue 5. Is it just going to be a 6-issue miniseries, or is it going to go 12 issues or even more? I don't know. And in at number 14, one that I do not have on my pull list, but I keep grabbing off the shelf because there's something I like about the concept of the Black Knight, the curse of the ebony blade. I like cursed weapons. And, you know, there's the boy in me that just loves any story. I'm trying to find pages with art and not ads. Loves any story with a lot of knights and swordplay and all of that. And so I thought this might be cool. And it's kind of been up and down. This is issue 4. Who knows whether I'll be in the mood to pick up the next issue. It just had kind of a garbled feel. I feel like, I don't know, it's something in the process at Marvel Comics, to me, I'm just guessing, a lot of Marvel Comics don't click as much as I feel they should, given the talent of the people working on them. In this case, Cy Spurrier is a writer that I usually like quite a bit, but I haven't read a lot of his work at Marvel. So anyway, the previous issue where Thor appeared and the Black Knight kicked Thor's butt, that, you know, back in the past, that was interesting. And I think Simon Spurrier is trying to build up a lot of lore here about the Black Knight and previous Black Knights, but it just did not gel very well. So I put that at number 14. Now, a really interesting one that I just picked up on a whim at one of my backup shops. I think I got this at a place called Books with Pictures that I haven't gone to much since COVID. But this is a Source Point book called Darling. I don't know why it's called Darling. I enjoyed reading it. And it has a pretty interesting and appealing art style. You know, not too much like any other thing that I can put my finger on. You know, not super out there, but definitely a personal style to the artwork. That artist is, I believe, David Mims. You know what? I think this is another case of a comic that's only copyright by the writers, and they even put David Mims' name in smaller print in the credits. And I think both of those things are a big mistake, because I would not have picked up this book. I picked up this book because of the art. And it's a pretty decent story about a heroin addict who, I don't know, but it didn't, I don't think I'll read more than one issue. I'm not super excited about reading a story about a heroin addict. You have to make me draw me into the story more, draw me into the character and why I should care about him. So I don't know. Again, maybe if I just see it on the rack and I don't have enough to read, it was, you know, a pretty good read. But I'm not dying to read more. And there's so many comics, right? Kaiju Max at number 12. This early seasons, this was almost always my number one book. I don't know if I was doing countdowns back then, but it was always like one of my favorite books. And I'm still enjoying it, but I'm having a lot more trouble following the thread of what's going on. And I was starting to have that trouble in season 5. So I think I'm kind of glad this is the final season. I'm going to stick with it because I've loved this book. And I'm still interested in what will happen with some of the characters and this world. But there's just things where I didn't quite understand the significance of who was what and what they were doing. Let me see. There was one in particular. Where did he go? Oh, well, I can't find it. This one character, I just couldn't figure out who that character was, and was I supposed to... Oh, this character here. Just no clue. No clue. So, you know, it's still a good comic, but I would, you know, if you haven't read Kaiju Max before, I'd say go read one of any of seasons 1 through 3 I particularly like. But they're... Probably 4 is good too, but I just sort of with 5 and 6 have started to lose a little bit of excitement over it. Kanto, this is kind of that mini series, a 3-issue series called Kanto and the City of Giants. It's kind of a fill-in series while the main artist gets ahead on the next big story. I liked this story. This final issue in the 3-issue thing felt like certain things were left. It was too easy. It ended too easy, which of course is maybe the problem of just 3 issues. It still had lots of cool fairy tale elements, and I enjoyed the art and the colors and the little bits of characterization we got here and there. So it's a nice supplement to the Kanto saga, but it could have been better, I think, because I really liked issue 1, and I don't know, maybe if it had 6 issues and they really developed some of the things. But no regrets in buying that for sure. And no regrets in buying the whole Redemption series. Although I think you can probably get the trade for $10. And let's see, 5 issues for $4. That is $20. So if I'm right, because I've seen some other AWA books at $9.99. Some of those are based on 4 issues, and this one was a 5-issue series. But you're paying double the price for the floppy. At least with AWA, you don't get ads until the back. Then you get, whatchamacallums. You get previews, which I never read. So I enjoyed this, but, you know, I'd mentioned all along it was kind of standard Hollywood movie kind of plot for a hard-boiled Western type of thing, like something that might have Clint Eastwood in it. And it totally just ended that way, you know, with at the last minute, the older gunfighter shows up and yeah, I just spoiled it. And that's it. You know, there's no special, nothing different. But I've enjoyed the whole process here, and I really enjoyed Mike Deodato's art. I've been up and down on Mike Deodato lately, but I thought that he did a really good job in this series. He's doing a lot of work for AWA. And his colorist, Lee Lowridge, I shouldn't say his colorist, but the colorist, Lee Lowridge, is subtle and keeps things simple or seemingly simple, but really gets this story looking just the way it should. So a pleasing package. But, you know, there was a hope that there would be some surprise in the final issue, and there really wasn't. It just delivered exactly what I expected. In at number 9, I'm putting Beta Ray Bill, this mini-series by the fantastic artist Daniel Warren Johnson. And nice coloring by Mike Spicer. There's cool things. Basically, just a little bit happens in this issue, and then we're going to be wrapping up in the next issue. So my only real complaint, and maybe what keeps this from wowing me as totally as it might, is that it just doesn't have much density of story. But I really enjoyed it. And, if I read it on a different day or, I don't know. I could see having ranked this much higher depending. And I think it's going to be a fun but kind of fast read when it's all put together. So, and again, we get with the magic swords, which I like. I feel like, this spaceship that has now become kind of a slightly humanized robot is a really interesting character, and I'm afraid she's not going to have much time to be developed, but maybe other writers or creators will come along and use her. Okay, in at number 8 was what might be the final issue of Two Moons. I don't know for sure. It looked great, art and coloring. We get the kind of ending that you'd expect in a Western horror story, where finally everyone sees the monsters and we all fight together against them. I'm trying to remember, though. Yeah, I didn't quite understand the ending. Wait, is that the... Yeah, the ending. Well, I did understand it. But they've left it kind of open-ended. I'm just not sure. And I think in the first 2, possibly 3 issues, I was thinking of this as being more kind of the mystical quest of this Indian character, but the horror element gained the upper hand in the balance of the story, which was perfectly fine. But I sort of, in my head canon, it wasn't the story I thought maybe I was going to see. But I definitely thoroughly enjoyed this. Like I said, there's so many good books this week, and they all were satisfying, but none of them blew the top off my head. So it was hard to say where to rank that. It's hard to say where to rank this. Made in Korea, number 2. I'm really enjoying this. I got to check if I put that on my pull list so I make sure to get all the issues. Really kind of cool, slightly understated art with really nice colors. I think the artist is the colorist. Yeah, George Schall, who I've never heard of before. Jeremy Holt, the writer, I think I've heard of him. This is about a robot child surrogate. So for people who don't have children, they get a robot child with software AI in its head. And this one, a programmer has secretly made her more advanced. The parents don't know that. And the programmer gets fired from the company, and he flies across. He's from Korea, and he flies over to the United States to try to gain custody of his creation. And he seems a little nutty. So a lot of interesting elements, really nicely paced. I'm not at the end of this comic. Some boys from school bring the AI girl to I don't think they know she's AI. I'm not sure what they know about her. Maybe they do. They bring her to their secret hideout, and they show her a bunch of tools. And now I didn't understand the significance of that scene. I don't know if I'm looking at guns or like nail guns or something else entirely. So I don't think I'm spoiling anything because it's just an element that's going to continue. And I just couldn't quite figure out the significance of it. And I'm not sure what kind of story we have here yet. Or even how long this is going to go for. But I'm enjoying it, and I should make sure it's on my pull list. It's one of those stories that's like an interesting thought experiment, amongst other things. Okay, let's see. Where am I? When I have a lot of comics I've read during the week, I will actually make myself a list so I won't completely lose track. So that was Made in Korea at number 7. In at number 6, I put USAGI YOJIMBO. Apparently they're doing the colorized USAGI reprints as kind of mini-series. So now they've started a new one called The Dragon Below Conspiracy. And the previous one, Wanderer's Journey, was all one-shot stories. I think it was called Wanderer's Journey, Wanderer's something. And it had covers by Peach Momoko. Now this seems to have covers by someone named David Peterson, who has a very different view of what USAGI YOJIMBO would look like than our main artist, our only artist and creator, Stan Sakai. Now, USAGI doesn't show up to the last few pages of this story, and it looks like we're being set up for. That's why I'm thinking this miniseries may be all one long story, set up for a longer kind of saga with some complicated politics, a female samurai, and it was good. It felt, I don't know, it didn't quite hook me as much as the usual USAGI, but I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing this rhinoceros character again, and the pig character who uses the blind pig with a nose that was cut off by USAGI, and he uses his nose, which is now a wooden nose, as his way of seeing the world. So I like that character. I mean, I'm kind of disturbed by him, but I like him. So I'm interested to see the next issue and how the elements of the mix of elements of characters that have been introduced here come together. Okay, in it, number 5 was a really interesting comic, and it's called Parasomnia, and it's written by Colin Bunn, art by Andre Muti, and I'm not sure if I've seen Andre Muti comics before or not, but apparently he is also the artist that also came out this week on Bunny Mask, and so when I loved the art in here so much, it makes me want to go get Bunny Mask. And was he also the artist on another horror comic recently? But Parasomnia in this first issue is a very mysterious comic with two sort of threads, one in this violent other world that, seems slightly, I don't know, 17th century or 16th century. And we follow this hero who never reveals his face, who's covered up, and he's on some sort of quest, and a lot of people are trying to stop him. And then we're also in the world, sort of in our world, with a family whose relative is in the hospital, and so I think those two are going to connect. So it's all, and there's also there's a bunch of little mysterious threads here about a missing person, and so while I couldn't put it all together, it was done with such confidence and pizzazz, and I like the art so much that I wasn't bothered. I just want to see the next issue and see how it gels. It's probably just 4 issues because that's what Dark Horse does these days. It's a Dark Horse comic, so yeah, I really liked Parasomnia. But I could, once the plot develops more, it may reduce my opinion of it, or it may increase it even higher. Another one I liked a lot which I put at number 4. I could have put it higher, I don't know, was Barbaric from Vault Comics. I appreciate, it's silly, but I appreciate the high quality of the cover. It's cover stock. It's also a cool looking cover. I think it had a bunch of variants that I've seen people show. Maybe this is a variant. Maybe this is the cover B. They don't show their variants. Anyway, it's art by this guy named Nathan Gooden, and it's really good art, really well colored by Radisson Duke. And it reminds me of you older guys, if I have any older guys in my age range watching, it reminds me of Esteban Morato artwork and other kind of artwork you would see from Spanish artists back in the day, or perhaps Filipino artists. This one, so it's pretty bloody. They use the F word a lot, which, I don't know. To me, it's not effective when you're got something set in some, not the Hyborian age, but some imaginary prehistory age, to have people using the F word and saying shit a lot and stuff. But anyway, other than that, the main thrust of the story is that this kind of bloodthirsty Conan-like barbarian has been cursed with an axe, a magical axe that talks, but only he hears it, and forces him to do good with his axe, and although the axe loves killing and gets like high or drunk off of killing, but only allows him or forces him to kill bad people. And and I guess he was forced to, he had a choice between going to hell or taking on the axe. And he almost thought about going to hell. So I don't think he likes doing good. But near the end of the book, he rescues an accused witch from burning and kills the people who wanted to burn her. But she really is a witch, and she has tattoos all over of weapons on her body. And it's really cool because she can pull the weapons out of her skin. So I think I like her character. I like the axe a lot, and I like her character a lot. The barbarian's okay, and I love the artwork here. So I think we're in for an interesting journey. I hope she remains as a character throughout, and hopefully they'll add in more interesting characters as they go. But it feels like another winner from Vault, which is kind of becoming one of the indie comic book companies to look at each new #1 they have. So I look very carefully now in previews each month to see what new #1s they're having coming out and pre-order the ones that look cool. And speaking of cool, from Image Comics was Vinyl #1. Even more than Parasomnia, I didn't really understand the plot here. I read it twice. I'll probably read it a third time because even though I'm not understanding it, I'm really enjoying reading it. So I hope in future issues all of that gels. And I love the color and the art. Someone pointed out to me that the art is kind of like Ryan Otley, and I can see that, especially in the faces and stuff. But there's something really nice about this artist's storytelling, and when you add on these almost cheerful colors from Dave Stewart, you get this really cool kind of subtly surreal effect. So we have a retired FBI agent who's still doing a favor for the FBI, keeping an eye on this presumed serial killer. And I guess the serial killer likes to play songs on vinyl over and over again while he kills. But then into the mix we get this weird cult who I guess has some grudge against the retired FBI guy and has brainwashed his daughter into joining their cult, and wackiness ensues from there. But I haven't pieced all of it together. But when something's written with a certain kind of confidence that it really seems to know what it's doing, I, at the moment, have confidence that I will understand all of this better as we go along. My biggest question marks are really about this cult and what's going on with that. So I hope we get some more clues about the cult and what it's about. But for whatever reason, it really tickled me pink. I almost thought I would put Vinyl at #1. That was #3. So my #2 is a huge surprise to me. It was the last thing I read. I just read it today. And I almost thought of not including it in the countdown. So possibly because I've just read it and I wasn't expecting it to be good at all, raised it up in my pleasure levels. It is Green Arrow, the 80th anniversary 100-page special. 100-page super special. And, we've had a lot of these now. Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, of course. I think we had a Green Lantern one, and I think some others, as all these heroes are hitting their 80th or 75th anniversaries. And a lot of them are pretty mediocre. And I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of these hit the mark as slightly humorous short one-shot stories, which are the one-shots are hard to make work, and a lot of appealing artwork. A lot of them took approach of, not taking Oliver Queen, is that his name? Oliver Queen, too seriously, sometimes taking him quite comedically. And I think that was a good way to go, especially for short pieces. And there wasn't a lot of those stories where it's just, oh, this character's so wonderful here, let's do a little homage to him because it's his 80th anniversary. So more sort of poking fun at him or playing off little bits of his mythos. Here we have an episode that's just him being trained by Wildcat because Black Canary asked Wildcat to do it, and he's not a very good boxer yet anyway. Another one that's just about him inventing new arrows with Speedy, obviously a Silver Age kind of version. Let's see, what else have we got? One of the things that is kind of a staple, I feel like, of the Justice League cartoons and stuff, where he gets stuck being the person who has to take care of the Watchtower while everyone else goes off on an adventure. And then he turns out to have an even bigger adventure than they have and handle it completely by himself while they're gone. And that was really fun. And I particularly got a kick out of this one, the artist Chris Mooneyham, who I haven't seen for a while. For a while he was looking to be kind of a hot thing, but he has kind of a retro style, and it was colored in a nice retro style, so I really like that. By contrast, I kind of wish this one that was very Silver Age had more bright Silver Age colors, but that's a small complaint. Let's see. I guess I shouldn't go through all of these. And there were a few I didn't totally get. I really enjoyed seeing Mike Grell back on Green Lantern, and he still can draw fantastically. I think his was one of the less snappy ones. It felt like part of a larger story. I liked it, but I didn't totally get it. The only story I didn't really get at all was this one scripted by Ram V, which is a surprise because I'm really loving most Ram V that I'm reading, but I didn't get what he was doing. And I think he was maybe more trying to do a tribute, to Green Lantern. Then there was this insert where they have a whole bunch of different scenes. I don't know if they're real or created for this 2-page thing where they jokingly say lessons from Green Arrow, but it's all where he's kind of doing things over the top or being a jerk or whatever. Any other highlights here? Let's see. Okay, there was a major highlight at the back, which was really about Denny O'Neil, not about Green Lantern. Oh, even this was fun with his chili recipe. It was just a fun comic. You have to, be into the lore of old DC and stuff to enjoy this, but if you are. But then at the back, this artist Jorge Formes and Larry O'Neil, Denny O'Neil's son, created a little tribute, a silent tribute to Denny O'Neil, and it showed him at different times of his life. The word balloons were just what he's imagining or what he's writing, and it would show all these different times of his life with him writing on the typewriter or talking with someone or whatever. I just really loved it. And Denny O'Neil's been a big part of my reading life since I was a kid. So it was good to kind of have this sense of closure about him. We don't get closure for people we don't know dying usually, but it was nice. It was maybe that's what propelled this to the number 2 spot, as this was the last thing I read before compiling this little stack. If it was all like that story at the end about Denny O'Neil, this would definitely be the number 1 for my week. But at number 1 was just the most fun comic I got this week. Ultimately, a lot of storm and thunder about nothing, but really fun insider comic book stuff. Storm and thunder about nothing. This strange anthology one-shot comic that's much larger than other comics from Image called Cain and Abel, which has 2 stories by Shaky Cain and 2 stories by this person I never heard of before, Krent Abel. And I really enjoyed the Shaky Cain stories, and I loved the Krent Abel stories. And both of them are playing with comics and superhero tropes. In the first Shaky Cain story, I think the Shaky Cain stuff is all referential to other work he's done, mostly in, what was it called? The Bulletproof Coffin, which I have not read the entirety of, but I've read a lot of Bulletproof Coffin, or enough. But Shaky Cain's artwork, there's something about it. To me, it's kind of like Jack Kirby meets Mobius or something along those lines. You could compare it to a lot of people. And Jack Kirby himself shows up in this story. And Jack Kirby and lots of other comic book greats are all over the work of both these artists, as is the work of underground cartoonists. Oh, there's Jack Kirby. So one of the running things of this story is this magic rocket ship pen or pencil that eventually gets passed on. This is how Shaky Cain represents himself in the comic. And we get fake ads. This is just a whacked out love letter to old comics, but with a touch of that underground cartoonist attitude. And then my favorite thing in the whole thing was this Krent Abel presents Black Fur. And Black Fur turns out to be he fights this insect character here, and Black Fur turns out to be a super bear with 2 robot baby assistants. And it was just wacky craziness. Definitely felt a lot of the underground sense here mixing in with the feeling of Silver and Bronze Age Marvel comics. So a warning, it does get really gory. I'm going to show a really gory page right now, right there. But I found, normally I'm not too much of a fan of intense gore, but this was all done at such a cartoony level, it didn't bother me. I can't read Red Room or something like that, but this didn't bother me. And then the other Shaky Cain story was a little quieter, more poetic, with this guy searching through a house and finding different layers of basements. And inside there was some hidden comic book art. So that was cool. And then the final story by Krent Abel was just this kind of nightmare landscape thing with 2 superhero-like characters, Nightmare and Sleepy, who apparently are real Golden Age superheroes that he was able to use. And just a whacked-out story with some gross parts. I don't know how to really describe what these kinds of stories are doing, but I really enjoy them while I'm reading them, and then when I look back over the art again and such, I can't really tell you what the point of it all is or anything like that. Wow, I've gone a half hour and plus, but while I'm here, I'll just quickly show you other stuff that I read this week. I read Peter Cannon Thunderbolt. Really enjoyed that. I'm trying to collect all of the Peter Cannon Thunderbolts. I only think from the Charlton days. I only think there's about 8 or 9 of them. It's interesting that the writer-artist of this, I think his name was Peter Morisi, and he signs his name P-A-M, his middle initial is A. It's all about kind of Eastern philosophy, sort of, in a comic book level, and not being interested in being a superhero, but having that ability anyway. And I find it interesting that Peter Morisi was a New York City police officer and moonlighted as a comic book artist. And then I read this issue of The Living Mummy, or Supernatural Thrillers, The Living Mummy, written by Tony Isabella and art by Val Mayrick. I enjoyed the art, and he's inked by Claus Janson, probably very early in Claus's career. I enjoyed the art pretty well. The story, I have to say, was pretty awful. And I read some of these Living Mummy issues when I was a kid and thought they were really cool and intense, but it did not have that effect on me as an adult. And then I read Tales to Offend. I picked this up at a store. I did not realize this is a Frank Miller comic. I just thought it was some unusual indie comic that would have a bunch of short stories in it. And it has a bunch of short Frank Miller stories, which really try desperately to offend the politically correct. To me, the joke wasn't very funny, at least the way he did it, and did just feel like he's pissed off at women and anybody, any kind of, what's the right word? Any kind of feminist criticism of things or anything like that. But not answering those criticisms in any kind of sophisticated way, but just sort of like, I'm going to be offensive to you. But even the offensiveness, I don't know, it just wasn't that funny. But I really enjoyed the art, and it's interesting to see Frank Miller merge with kind of a Wally Wood style of things. So I'm glad I read it. I don't really feel offended. I would have liked to see, I don't know what I would have wanted out of something called Tales to Offend. But I don't think he succeeded too much. I also, maybe it was the week before, but I read these 2 issues of Tankers. I found these at Books with Pictures, and this was fun. But I had thought all bad idea comics were $3.99, and so I just picked them up. And when I got home, I realized I paid $6 for each of these. And I don't know if I would have bought them if I know they were $6 each. That was a bit offensive. Oh, and here I've read most of this issue number 10 of Now magazine. It's not, the name of the book is not The Future is Female, and there's nothing relating to this subject inside the comic. It's just part of this piece of art they used for the covers. I've now read 3 issues of Now out of the 10 they published. I don't get their covers, and the covers don't seem to in any way relate to the interior material, which is off in this issue. In the previous issues I read, I was not too thrilled by them. And this issue was often quite good, but often still a bit mysterious, like what was the point? And often the story ends at a point where it seems like if you did 1 or 2 more pages, it would have made more sense, if that makes sense saying that. One of the things I really loved in here were they published, I think for the first time, where'd they go? For the first time, they published a few early works of Richard Sala that he never published, that I guess he did in the early days when he was starting to do comics. And I guess this is not the Richard Sala style that other people love, but I really liked his style here, and I liked kind of the elusive irony. They were kind of pulpy, little 1 or 2 page pulp snippets done in this kind of ironic way, in a way a bit matching the Cain and Abel vibe for me. So I really enjoyed that in particular. But there's other good stories in here. And I've talked about this, Where Monsters Dwell. I talked about this on the Hangout with Rasa and Comic Crack and Earl Grey, but this was all reprints of 1960 horror stories from Marvel, and it was really good. And I'm in the middle, or less than the middle, of reading this Tomorrow's book called Old Gods and New, which is all about the background and the work of Jack Kirby on the New Gods 4th World saga, and stuff that led up to it and stuff that happened afterwards. And it's kind of like part oral history, part essay about it all. So I highly recommend this if you're into Kirby. I think it's one of the better books so far. I'm about a third through it. And finally, I expect to soon be reading this. Talked about it a little bit with Earl Grey. He made a video about Basil Wolverton just a few days ago. And this has been sitting on my shelf for a long time, and I kind of forgot it was there. I buy too many art books and then later realize, hey, I haven't gotten around to reading it. And this is, I think, a study of his life and work, plus a book reprinting a lot of his work in full. And so I'm really excited to dive into it. Some of it is stuff I've read in a less good reprint from PS publications. So if I'd known I already had his stories in here, perhaps I wouldn't have bought that PS publication. This is a beautiful book, man. And it costs $45. Street price. Not the street price, the list price. Okay, guys, I seem to be starting to sweat. So that probably means this video has gone on too long. Maybe my house is not keeping up air conditioning wise. I'll talk to you guys all later. I hope you're having a good week of comic book reading.